I've interviewed the most made men
Yeah.
or alleged made men out of any U.S. media source. So I'm there with Johnny, and we're hanging out, and we're like discussing another interview and some business. And two Lucchese guys walk in, and they didn't see John at first. And John like looked up. Italian Canadian Mafia is by far usurped and passed the Italian Mafia in strength, power, and money. Now, why?
You interview these guys. It's very much a kind of business sort of stance of
Yeah.
what they are business. Are these guys smart, or most of them smart, like business sense wise? Would you say?
Yeah, I would say no.
I'm really interested to know your take on what you think would have happened with the Mafia if Paul Castellano survived.
So I was so excited to be having a cigar with Jordan Belfort. I mean, what other us normal blokes? I mean, that's as good as it gets. Okay, so one thing I learned from my economics professor, but also from my drunk uncle in Italy.
Tom La Vecchia, thank you very much for joining the show. Pleasure to have you on. How are you?
I'm well, and thanks for having me, Rob.
Pleasure. Good to see you. Let's jump straight into your childhood, shall we? Let's just jump straight to it. So can we tell me and the viewers a bit about your childhood, where you grew up, schooling, etc.
Absolutely, we're gonna lay in the couch, get the tissues ready, and we'll get cracking. No, so I am first generation Italian American. My family came over in 1959 to Elizabeth, New Jersey. At the time, Italian section. It's still called Peterstown. And then around 1972, a few years before I was born, moved to Roselle Park, New Jersey, which is the suburbs of the area. My father left when I was 2, so I grew up in a single mother household. My father was kind of in and out of my life, and then eventually passed away at 17. I'm one of 6 kids. We lost one of our siblings. My second oldest brother passed, but so we're 5 siblings, alive and well, and Italian American family upbringing, very entrenched in the Italian American culture. I've been to Italy about almost a dozen times, and kind of just regular kind of childhood. What was interesting enough is as an adult now with 4 children, I thought I had a normal childhood. Well, I did have a normal childhood, but my mother was a single mother, never making more than $15,000 a year, and we didn't want for anything. At the time, we were probably at best middle class, maybe lower middle class, if you had a kind of society rank. But now that looking back, she did everything for us. We didn't think we needed anything, and it was a great upbringing when I look back.
You say you grew up in Italian American community or Italian community in New Jersey. I take it there was mobsters around your area then.
Yeah, let's just get right into the stereotypes. Just kidding. Just kidding. The truth of the matter is, the reality, especially in the 80s and 70s, if you were, especially we're from the other side, right? So like back then, there was more of a tie-in through Italy. A lot of mobsters at that point were foreign born. At that point, to give you some context, the De Cavalcante family is indigenous to the Ribera, Sicily, and the Riberese, people from Ribera, have migrated over to Elizabeth. It's literally the second largest at that point town of Riberese outside Ribera itself. So the other town in Elizabeth called Balata, where I am from, also Chef Tom Colicchio is from there as well, another notable person, not a mobster, but a chef, reputable chef, are from Balata. So a lot of the Valadez, which we are from, and the Riberesi wind up marrying because they were both in this enclave. So the Cavalcante family is indigenous to Ribera, and I would say at one point of the 70 mobsters, at one point, probably 50 of them were from Ribera. It's a little known fact, and there's a debatable that the oldest Mafia family may actually be out of New Jersey, not Louisiana. There's a little bit of controversy behind that. So to give you some context, we were kind of ground zero for the New Jersey Mafia.
Ground zero for the New Jersey Mafia. So did you see him about? Did you go into any social clubs or
Yeah.
anything like that?
Oh yeah. I'm very open about this. I'm friends with her now, Karen Gravano. My first cousin married Sammy the Bull's niece, um, John Riggy, who was the boss of the Jersey family. He was Ribaresi on his father's side, and his mother was Valadez. We weren't related, but we were paisan. But a family member of mine married his granddaughter, and I actually attended the wedding. So I met everybody in that family over the years. So I've been around a lot of mobsters socially. I used to spend a lot of time in Brooklyn hanging out, especially like Diker Heights, Diker Park, which is at the time a hotbed for mafia activity. And then obviously I have a lot of friends in Brooklyn over the years, so I was around it socially. I never did business with any mobsters. I never claimed to be. I'm a podcaster. I'm a content creator. But whether I like it or not, I was around people in that life. I've been to Sicily, where I went to places in and around like Portonico, and I met people that were allegedly men of honor there, again in a social setting. But I've met different type of mafiosi from both sides of the pond over the years, and like I said, I'm very respectful. I have no, animus towards them when I meet them, but I also try not to praise either, and that's kind of explains why I got into the mafia genre. My mother, being a true Italian from Italy, was against the mafia. She was born in Vallata, near about 2 hours of Napoli. Uh, that's more the Camorra land, and just knew what it really was about. So she annexed us away from that life. So I never met Sammy growing up. I never met Karen, his daughter, growing up. I met her later in years. We became friends. But my point being is, um, I was annexed away from it. So as a result, I had a kind of more of an intellectual curiosity. Now we met people over the years, weddings, funerals, dinner dances, who comes over for Sunday dinner. We had some people in our family that I don't want to mention that were connected. Some have passed, some haven't. But my mother kept us away as much as she could away from that life. So as a result, I developed like intellectual curiosity, read over 100 books, um, numerous documentaries, and I kind of became like an historian because I was so fascinated about two things. One, about the mafia experience being Italian American in the U.S., but also about the Italian American experience and how it coincides. The truth of the matter is, there's not as much overlap as you would think. Even back then, in the 80s, only one out of every 10,000 Italian Americans had any contact to organized crime, and now it's probably closer to one in every 500,000 because Italian Americans.
Well, so you say your mother knew what it was really about. So for her, what was it really about?
Okay, so my father left when I was two, and he wasn't like the best guy. So he would go to the Ribera Club, the Valadez Club. He would play Tiquanetta and all the different games. So when he hung out with those guys, it was about gambling and drinking, and not really drugs back then because a lot of the guys just drank instead of drugs. Drugs kind of came later for some people, but just it was just a bad life, the street life. It wasn't for her. So she did literally every waking interest, every waking bit of energy towards her to keep me away from that life. And for the most part, she succeeded. I obviously have a lot of friends growing up that are in that life. I have a good friend of mine that we don't talk as much, but is in that life. I kind of, as you get older, and I can kind of speak to this. I do okay. I live in a very nice neighborhood, and it's an Italian American neighborhood, but kind of usually like back in the day, if you were wealthy and you were Italian American, there would be the token mobster or the mafiosi, and you would say, "Oh my God, they got like mafia cash." So now I live in a great neighborhood and a lot of Italian Americans, and the mafia dudes that are around live kind of where I grew up, and they don't have as much money as they used to, and I can kind of speak to why I believe that is.
So do you think your mother?
It's my
Yeah, no worries.
well, I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. No worries. I should have got a few beers myself, shouldn't we? Could have had a chat over. Mind you, it's quite early in the morning there, so I'm probably not a 9 o'clock in the morning drinker. um,
Not yet, at least.
yeah. So, do you think your mother's influence dissuaded you from going down that route, or do you think your intellectual curiosity or other reasons stopped you from sort of going down a route of being associated with or in
It
the mob?
was it was simply her.
Simply
So again, when my cousin married Sammy the Bull, like they were somewhat estranged anyway, but like we didn't go to the wedding. Like if there was, events, like we would never not go to events. It's again dinner, dancing in the community, weddings, funerals, but just always made it a point when we met somebody and they were kind of storte, not straight. My mother would make it a point to say, hey, stay away from him or stay away from their kids.
I'm sure that you've got a lot of things to thank your mother about for, but I guess
Yeah.
this must be up there.
Yeah, like I said, like and where I could have got tangled up is, believe it or not really a lot of the guys from New Jersey, but from New York. When I used to hang out in Brooklyn a lot, we used to go to the St. Rosalia Feast. We used to go to the Walk, as the old 19th hole where Castle used to hang out. So I kind of caught like the post, Bath Ave era, the post Castle era, the post, Sammy era. But there were still a lot of people around there. The Columbos were very strong. It's a long story, but I actually went to a prom. I graduated already, but as a favor to my friend, we went to a prom in Brooklyn. Well, it was in the Plaza with one of the Persico's daughters. I don't want to say which one. It's not appropriate. But so I actually went to the prom with them as a favor. She didn't have a date. She was attractive, but just didn't have a date. So my buddy's like, "Hey, I'm gonna bring her. You're gonna bring her." And we went to the plaza and had a great time and met like their family, became friendly with them. But said always kept it social. Never crossed any lines. Never asked any favors. My brother who passed, I did have a prom once in high school, and it was pretty bad. And he said, "Don't let me take care of it. Don't ask for any favors, because if they ask you to kill me, you got to do it. So just stay away from it." So I just always got good sage advice.
Smart family there, Tom. Um, so what was school like for you? I imagine that y- it was a good experience, like academically for you.
Believe it or not, I was a terrible student in high school, absolutely terrible. I got into Rutgers Newark, which is the second rung of Rutgers. The main one's in New Brunswick, which is worldwide national, but still Rutgers and Newark. Um, I got in on probation. I was not a studious guy. That was weird about me. Like I wouldn't know what I wanted to be. Right. I wasn't like a street guy. I knew that wasn't in my heart, but I wasn't overly academic. So I got to Rutgers, and then something just snapped. I worked full time during my undergraduate because I had a good work ethic, and I went to school full time as well. So what happened was I built an appreciation for school when I realized I would go to school at night. And when I would go to school, Rutgers Newark at night, there'd be mostly, I was like one of the only few white guys there, mostly African American women. Some even brought like their kids to class. So it made me realize, wait a second, like I'm going to college and like I'm here, and look, some people that are sitting next to me in the same seat, how much harder it is for them to be here and get here. So I grew up great appreciation. And something kind of clicked. I finished my undergraduate at Rutgers in business. And then because my company was willing to pay for it at the time that I worked for, I got my master's in marketing as well, and that's when I kind of got like a lot more academic. So I'm like, you know what? They're going to pay for it. I'm going to work during the day, learn like practical, like real world business. Got to go to school at night to learn the academic. Join that up, and I'm very happy that I chose that route.
Your company paying for an MBA is really impressive because MBAs aren't like conventional degrees. Well, they're not like here anyway. They're bloody expensive.
Yeah, they are. So I always believe in OPM. So my entire undergraduate was paid by my company that I worked for, a pharmaceutical company, and my master's, it was $50,000. I only paid $5,000. So I have a master's degree, and out of pocket, my total education only cost me 5 G's.
Lucky guy. So your to your adulthood. So what did you do before? I take it you had a life before you came into the podcasting world.
Yeah, so I got podcasting probably later in the game.
Join the club.
Very traditional route. Um, And again, I apologize. I'm going to get comments. He's rude for eating. It's like, guys, so it's 9 a.m. here, and I was not fasting, but I was cleansing for 3 days. So I haven't eaten for 3 days. So like this is my first like kind of meal. So you got to forgive me, Rob.
No problem.
Want to before we get the roasting in the comments. So with that said, though, Rob, I grew up, got worked my ass off. I was very focused on work early on in life. Tried to always stay clean. Drank a little bit here and there, but nothing crazy. But like never did drugs because I was like kind of traumatized by what happened with my brother, and just like lived a good, honest life and worked my ass off, build brick by brick. I got married, my first marriage at 31. That lasted roughly 10 years. We got divorced about 6, 7 years ago. And then I met my beautiful wife now that I shortly after, kind of new lease on life. I'm a little older now, I'm 48. But I have 4 kids, two going to be 4, 11 and 14. 2 from previous marriage, 2 from current marriage. So I got a beautiful, great wife who's a great mother, and not a little non-traditional for an Italian American. You're not, I'm not, like not supposed to get divorced because you're Catholic, that kind of stuff. But you got to live your truth, and if you're not with the right person, you got to really try to, be happy, and obviously always be a good father first. I was even doing a lot of studies, or reading a lot of studies. I'm like, well, if you do get divorced, you get broken home, single fatherhood. But what the data shows that if you're involved with a child's life, even though that is you're divorced, it's actually better than somebody who's in the home and is not the right father. So I take my role as a father very serious. It's my first role, first and foremost, along with being a great husband. Then I'm trying to get healthier. I just dropped about 15 pounds,
Wow.
so I'm a little lighter than when I spoke, and I'm still trying to go down that descent. And that's kind of where I'm at. But podcasting, I started in 2016, and I didn't even do mob podcasting in the beginning. It's mostly business.
So you're not losing this weight to go into a celebrity boxing match, are you?
No, no, no. I have no. I when I was younger, much younger, I used to train in samurai jiu-jitsu and kempo karate, and I got the crap kicked out of me enough for a lifetime. So I don't think I need it again.
And before we get into the podcasting world, or maybe it was around the time that you were in the podcasting world, but I took your LinkedIn summary, and I'd like to just
Yeah,
read it out here. So you've got your fingers in many pies. You're founder of
yeah.
X Factor Media, a full-service media, digital media agency based outside of New York and New Jersey. You also publish the New Jersey Digest, which is, I think it's an online, I don't know if it's physical.
I,
Yes, it's an online news service. You also host the New Theory and Armchair MBA podcast. So you've got 2 podcasts.
well, so okay, so the armchair. Okay, so to keep it so simple for you, X Factor Media is my company. That's a marketing and media company. So that is we do like if you approach us and you say, hey, I want to get more viewers for my podcast, or I want PR, or I want a website, I want SEO. We deal with small to medium sized businesses, generally 500,000 to as high as 20 million. That's kind of our wheelhouse. So we service those clients on a retainer basis. So that's kind of the core of our business. Now we have company owned assets. Our best is New Jersey Digest, which is an online magazine based out of New Jersey, and we reach over 1 million people a month. And although it's based in New Jersey, we do a lot of evergreen content. So we do have a worldwide presence in terms of traffic. Roughly like 30% of our traffic is actually outside of New Jersey, which is interesting. And then lastly, New Theory, which is a magazine, newtheory.com online, and
Okay.
a podcast. New Theory launched in 2015. I was trying to get in on the you Brits bought out Elite Daily. The Daily Mail bought out Elite Daily for like $50 million. So I wanted to be the next, and I started a New Theory in 2015, and I had the golden touch. We wrote an article about how millennials do not go to nightclubs, and the first month it got 330,000 hits. The next month it got 1 million hits. The next month it just went worldwide viral. So I had the golden touch for New Theory. I'm like, oh my god, it's exciting. I'm gonna have a big exit. Everything's gonna be great. I just hired the wrong people. It went to shit, right? So I didn't have the staff to keep it going because the business model was off. I hired the wrong people. I found out when I got on their emails, because their company email, that they were actively looking to like take clients and actively looking to take resources. So I had to let go like 3, 4 people because it just was I can get into like a whole nother discussion, right? Hiring the wrong person in as an entrepreneur is the most costly thing you can do. They say hire slow, fire fast, and promote the fastest. And that's something I try to live by every day. So post that experience. So what happened was I had no resources to keep New Theory going. I had a big investment at that point. So I started a podcast to be the initial driver for the content. Because people have said to me, hey, you were in sales. I wrote a sales book. You were really successful over the years. You sold $100 million worth of crap over the years. I'd love to hear how those conversations would go. So sure enough, I started a podcast in 2016. I started out doing business and entrepreneurs, and then eventually kind of led me to the mob genre, which was Michael Francis was my first mob interview back in 16, I think 17 rather, and I just noticed those podcasts did better. I had a personal interest, and that brought me to doing the NBA and Buttman, which was with John Panisi. John Panisi's now on his own. I'm on my own. And then Armchair NBA was kind of like an interstitial that I had as my moniker after John and I had separated. But then now, full circle, I have New Theory podcast, which supports the New Theory magazine. And then I'm relaunching Mobsters Inc., which I'm happy to announce on your show. We're going to be relaunching that soon, called Mobsters Inc. I purchased that channel. I got the trademark finally, so I'm ready to relaunch that. So I got my hands in a few different pots. But in terms of, I guess your interest is, I've interviewed the most made men, or alleged made men, in out of any U.S. media source. I know Vlad is around 8 or 9. Patrick McDavid is around 8 or 9. But I have the most, and that's a lot for a show my size. I've interviewed numerous associates. Now, I get heat where I get a lot of heat for is they feel maybe I platform, informants, and you'll probably get that heat too. And then also, um, I had a lot of associates on as well. So I have some learnings I can speak to about that. I don't judge. I'm a free speech guy. So if you want to come on my show and speak, I could probably do a better job at governing. But in terms of informants and my experiences, I definitely have the most experience in that in the space. And there's some positives, but there's a lot of negatives as well.
So before we jump into the mob stuff, like both feet, I watched you among your many bits and pieces you've been involved in. I saw you on Fox News actually.
Yeah.
I think it was last month, and
Yeah.
because my business acumen is probably close to zero, I'm not a business guy at all.
Yeah.
But I learned a few things from it. You were talking about the surge in pricing, surge pricing, which I know
Yep.
we won't dwell on too much. I'm sure people aren't really interested in necessarily understanding that. But also the theory behind cluster restaurants, which I thought was brilliant. Why all restaurants are like clubbed together? Like, you'd think, why would you do that? Why would you club all these restaurants together? But you're explaining the theory behind it, business reasons, which is
That's well, not to bore you guys or to geek out, but they call that the hoteling paradox by grouping the restaurants, the fast food restaurants, all together. So let's just say Wendy's was on the east and McDonald's was on the west. You run the risk of having maybe a 60-40 market share split, right? But when they're together and clustered, there's probably a good chance not only is going to be a 50-50 split, so you mitigate your risk, you're going to be known for having the fast food district. So you actually not only will have greater market share, but you'll have more volume. And that's what they call hoteling paradox.
fascinating.
It's the opposite of what you would. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I learned a couple of things from it. Anyway,
Yeah. I'm kind of, Rob, you probably picked up on it. I'm kind of an eclectic guy. I have interviewed like all within like 2 weeks. He wasn't an informant, but Lou Fronte, an ex, Gambino guy. And then 2 weeks later, I interviewed Mark Laurie, who's a billionaire. So, like,
yeah,
I like eclecticness. My channel is not for everyone. What I try to do is when I do the mob stuff is try to unpack and give the business kind of portion of it. I try to extract that portion. I know I make loss over the morality. I kind of get a little bit of heat for that. And I fully own that. but my goal is to learn, why did this guy inform? Was it the fault of the organization? Why wasn't the organization evolving? It's kind of geeky, but that's kind of my lane.
The thing is, if you don't interview informants, who are you going to interview? There's only a hand. I know Louis Ferrante. There's only a handful of people that
Yeah.
you can actually you could interview in the genre,
Well,
isn't it?
but here's the other part too, and unfortunately, there's a lot of like politics in this space, and you're gonna probably find out if you haven't found out already. So I've interviewed a lot of non-informants. I've interviewed Pablo Escobar's wife, not an informant, not even close. I don't know if you saw, and he's pretty popular now in the UK. I interviewed Salvatore Reina, which is Totorina's son, and his first ever U.S. interview. I interviewed him twice. Not an informant, not even close.
Mm.
Now, respectfully, they were great interviews because they were hard gets, but they were watered down because they're not informants. They're not going to speak to the same thing informants, would do. And Louis Fronte as well, not an informant. We had a great conversation. So I've interviewed both non-informants and informants. Now, I don't have a moral stance on if a guy's an informant, it precludes me from speaking to them. So I'm going to give you my background on this, or my thought on this. I am a law and order guy, right? In the U.S., you're kind of getting, and I'm a registered Democrat, so I can say this: you're getting a lot of the left defund police, defund programs, defund informants, and that's a very left leaning, view. And what happens is you need informants, right? If it's a PEDO ring, I don't want to say because I don't want to get demonetized, with children that are trafficked, I want informants there.
Yeah,
If there is a SA ring, I want informants there. So why are those in terrorism? I want informants there. In Cosa Nostra, when I get approached, to do a website for somebody and it's 30 grand and he beats me for that because of who he is, a made guy, I want an informant for that. So ethically, that's where I land. Now, the second part is you're right. Where are you supposed to get your information? Now, I want to give both sides of the coin to be completely fair. Now, guys like us are going to interview informants, and we should treat them like guests. Come to the house, wipe your feet, come in, have a coffee. You should treat them like guests, right? Give them the form they deserve. However, however, um, I did not challenge them enough in the past, and I got some feedback from family members that were affected by informants, and that hit me pretty hard. So I kind of pulled back a little bit on that front, and I haven't interviewed an informant since. But moving forward, and I'm not saying I got to be the gotcha guy and the tough guy and try to get into to look cool in front of anybody, but I do feel even as a podcaster, we do have some responsibility to vet a little better and maybe not give free reign.
yeah, I agree with that. I looked at your channel actually.
Well, did you get heat for interviewing Gene?
Yeah. Do you know? Do you know? Right. One of the first people to message me was no other than Joey Merlino. And he met
Stop it.
honestly, and he messaged me saying, "Well, that's what you get when you interview rats."
Did you? Okay. So for like an English folk like yourself to get a message going Molino, just walk me through that if you don't mind me asking.
So, so obviously the situation with Gene and I uploaded the video, and to my surprise, it went quite big for someone I think who had 50 subscribers.
Well, that's how I found.
Yeah, that's how you found it. Yeah, and other people found it. So I guess when it got to a certain popularity, if you like, Joey Molino's crew may have must have seen it, I guess, or Joey himself. I'm not sure. And then yeah, so then he just said, yeah, just say that's what you get when you interview rats. And I responded, well, who else am I meant to interview? Because obviously at the time he just come off Vlad, and they were saying
What is
he said true.
well, watch. So there's the dichotomy, right? So I interviewed Joe Perry, his partner, early on when he first launched, helped him promote the show. I'd never spoken to Joey. I did ask Joe Perry how much he wants to come on. I know he wants to get paid. The amount that was in front of me wasn't how do I say it? Wasn't feasible. I'm a business guy. People have this think I have this blank check. I'm going to pay whatever for guests. No, 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 no. If I get a sponsor to pick it up, or if I have something that's gonna, make it business wise, make it attractive, I'm going to do it, right? So yeah, Joey's a little too expensive for me to interview. Number two, to be honest, he's now taking a very hard stance on informants, which he always had. But I also think he's going to pick and choose where he did interviews. But I was very surprised he did Vlad, because I know for a fact Vlad doesn't pay, and when he does, it doesn't pay well. And then it's also a platform that informants have been on. So it's just very dichotomous, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a weird scenario, isn't it, with these rats? Well,
But I would love.
sorry, I want to clarify that with this rat sort of situation and all the drama that revolves around it. What's that? Sorry.
But here's the thing. But here's the thing, Rob. I am a civilian. Like, I am a normal podcast or business person. I do consider myself to have half a brain. I would actually love to sit down with Joey Merlino and ask him questions. And I have enough experience where I can navigate, where I know what not to ask and what not to. When I interviewed Pablo Escobar's wife, who I'm not knocking Joey Merlino, and this is not an indictment in any way, but Pablo Escobar versus Joey Merlino, wasn't Pablo Escobar himself, but to have, Pablo Escobar's wife on is a different level, right? Totorina's son, I mean, is a different level. And I know how to navigate those questions and be respectful. But the thing is, some people feel if you had even like one informant on, you're a little pregnant, right? You can't be a little pregnant, and then they may not want to come on your show, and that's their prerogative. I get it, but I have an open forum. I had John Alite on a few times, and I had people that actually came on after he came on to dispute facts that Johnny Alite said, and that was fine. I have an open forum. I prefer if Rob comes on my show and says something somebody deems out of pocket. If somebody reputable approaches me and wants to counter that person, I'm more than happy to give them the same airtime.
You mentioned,
Because I believe in.
yeah,
Yeah.
you mentioned John Ayler. When I was doing a bit of research on your channel, that was your first video, or I don't know if it was a video, but it was your first piece of content that really blew up, wasn't it? John Ayler. You
Yeah. So
interviewed him twice.
it's like back in 2015, and that was like on another little channel that I had, but like 300,000 views. It was crazy. And Mike Francis, when I interviewed him right after that, that was audio. But Johnny Alite was one of my first video interviews, and that's why I decided to start doing more video back then, which I think was around 2017, and that's when he released his book Gotti's Rules, I believe.
Yeah, I remember because what got me interested in the mod genre was Michael Francis. I think he had a channel at the time, but he wasn't really posting much. But there was
Yeah,
his sermons were on line. You know, when he
yeah,
was in his story was out there through other channels. And John Alite came along. He was really the second person, and I read
correct.
his book as well, Francis and Alite, and I thought his story was absolutely fascinating. And through them two, it's kind of blown up. I think.
I interviewed Michael over 4 times. Met him in person. I like Michael a lot. I consider him a friend. I've got him some guests. He's just we just have a good working relationship. So just to kind of give you some background, also in and again in Italy, when you're an informant, you guys in the UK, they call it a supergrass, right? A
Yeah.
grass or supergrass, right? And in Italy, they call it a pentito. Pentito means a repentant one, because the Italian culture is shrouded in Catholicism and religion. So it's actually a reformed one. In my personal opinion, I do think Michael Francis is reformed. He's been out of the life for 40 years, and hasn't at no level of recidivism in his case. And I think he's a good guy.
When you first, or maybe even now, but Although I think you've moved away from interviewing sort of in the mob genre, so to speak. Did you get nervous for interviewing these guys? It was quite early on, wasn't it, in your channel?
Super early. I got nervous because I got some blowback from people I knew, some people from that life, and it was very nascent. So everybody was kind of like, "What are you doing interviewing this guy? What are you doing that guy?" I was in a diner in Kenilworth. I'll give you two instances. I was in a diner in Kenilworth, New Jersey, and what happened was, and I really told. So one of the places I first interviewed Johnny A was an office I was renting from, right? And it's a family member of mine. And when I conducted the interview, I made the mistake of telling my family member. So he was not happy that John was there because he was connected. And he's like, "You do what you want. It's your life." But you just don't want him in my building again. So when I had a second meeting with John, we met in a diner in Kenilworth, New Jersey, which is a lot of Italian Americans, some people that way. That's where Sammy DeCavalcante was from, and had his not only his restaurant, he used to hang out at Angie Mims, but also his headquarters and office. And he got bugged, and I recommend a book called the Cavalcante Tapes, which is amazing. But nevertheless, so I'm there with Johnny, and we're hanging out, and we're like discussing another interview and some business. And two Lucchese guys walk in, and they didn't see John at first. And John like looked up, and John, to his credit, didn't look down, didn't look away, didn't say we got to go. It was very matter of fact, and he looked, and I happened to know one of them. I think he was a Lucchese captain. I did not know the other one. But they were they were gentlemanly. They saw him. They had two cups of coffee, they threw it 20, and they left. They wanted nothing to do with him. They saw him. They weren't going to attack him. They weren't going to mean grill. They weren't disrespectful, but they just wanted nothing to do with him. But then conversely, and this is where like a lot of the hypocrisy comes in. I was meeting with Johnny a few years back at a restaurant in Mountainside, and we're just meeting for a drink, just going over stuff. I was interviewing him again. And a guy, and I don't want to say which town because there's not that many wise guys around, but there was a Gambino associate that came in that I knew had a restaurant. And when I was with John, and he knew me, and I was with John, and I'm not gonna lie, I kind of perked up a little bit. I got a little nervous. Lo and behold, and I'm not saying Johnny A. Late fraternizes with mobsters in the life, but what I am saying is he went up to him and was there to meet him and us. I was like, "Oh shit, I didn't know you guys knew each other, playing dumb, whatever." But my point being is, if like guys in the life talk to Johnny A. Late, why can't you and I?
So these two Lucchese guys, so shouldn't they have gone for like attacked him? Isn't that the code?
Not the movies. We're in Kennewick, New Jersey, suburbs. These guys are in their 50s. It's not the movies. No.
So that's, and the thing is as well. I mean, I wouldn't think John A. would cower down to anybody. So he'd definitely
No,
fight back, wouldn't he?
he's a shorter guy but stout guy, and I wouldn't mess with him at any age. Another funny story. One time, and again, I don't really talk to John that much anymore, and we don't hang out. But we got along because we did a lot of interviews together, and you build a rapport. So we were working on kind of this little mini project. So I met him in Freehold, New Jersey, for drinks, and a lot of his ex kind of comrades were there, if you will. So I go home early. I was married at the time. I go home early, and then I hear on the news there was a shooting outside of the same place, Metropolis in Freehold, New Jersey. I called him up. I'm like, "Are you okay?" I thought it was him or somebody he was with. It was another random group that had like a shootout, and this was a place where probably the only shootout of the decade. So I thought maybe that I might have missed out on the action. Thank God, but it had nothing to do with them.
Gravano's been your biggest, most popular video on your channel. What was it like?
By far.
Yeah,
So
200 over 200,000 views.
yeah, my biggest. So let me think. Well, yeah, it was my biggest interview on YouTube in total. That is correct. So my interview with him is on one end. I had C-19. Again, I don't want you to get demonetized, and he had C-19. So him and I were both very ill. We had on the books for a while. We didn't want to miss it in a good way. Thank God we didn't miss it because he was sick for the next 6 weeks. I was sick for the next 3. We were both very ill, right? Number two, one of the positives about it, and the reason why I did the interview was the number 2 guy in an organization that had $500 million a year in turnover in the 80s, right? In the 80s, right? So I wanted to learn the business aspect. I wanted to learn how they made business. I wanted to learn about John Gotti's leadership style. I wanted to learn is, as the underboss, was he an empowered leader? Was he able to make decisions? And for that, I met that end. That's why I think it went so well, because it was a little out of context for the normal Sammy the Bull interview. Where I got a lot of heat was, they were like, "Well, why didn't you ask about who we killed?" And why that wasn't the scope of the interview. I'm a business guy. I'm unapologetically a business guy. That's what I do. That's what I care about. So I got a little bit of heat for that, but overall, that did extremely well.
Was that agreed between you two, his team and you, that you wouldn't discuss
So
any murders?
yeah, so I had so of my bigger interviews, Escobar was controlled. I had to submit the questions ahead of time and get vetted. Rina was controlled. I had to submit twice. Little mistake on my part. On the second one, I asked maybe a little too much information and almost cost me the interview. It's like this is a categorical no. He's not an informant. Like, it's not happening. But then we massaged it. We figured it out. With Sammy, I had guidelines of what I was going to ask, but I did not have a do not ask list. But I had some guidelines. But I was there on a mission. I just was really interested to hear how he operated. Again, a $500 million organization. The Gambino crime family in the '80s would have been on the Fortune 500 if it was legitimate. And there's no accounting, there's no books, there's no P&L statements.
Mm-hmm.
It's just 260 guys making a fuck ton of money together, and he was a number 9, and that was just my interest. And I'm kind of respectfully, that's just my lane, and I stick to it.
So you've done Gravano, Francis, Alite. Who else? Number 4.
You see Paul
Yeah.
Tanzo, Anthony Carlotta, Dom
Tom
Sicali,
Sicali, right.
that's number 6. Salvarodina, which I'm not supposed to say he is, but he was, or at least alleged by the government. And the reason why he couldn't say that or talk about that, if he admits a mafia association, he goes back to jail. In Italy, it's illegal to be in the mafia. I've done over 500 interviews total. People got to understand
Of
that.
course.
My mafia content is probably 20% of it of total content. So it's, and I'm getting older. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I didn't eat for 3 days. So I'll get back to you. Yes, I think I'm around 10.
Any interesting stories with these guys, or any
Um,
of you?
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I did do a show with John Panisi. Him and I
I was going to
had
ask you
had a
about
good
that.
friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, friendship. It quickly ended abruptly. I have no ill will towards him. Hopefully, he doesn't have any towards me. But there's a little bit of a rug pull there. But we had an interview lined up with Tom Sizemore. We're supposed to interview Tom Sizemore, and literally, like at the last minute, Tom Sizemore had some like health issues, and like he bailed on the interview and like died like 2 days later. I was like, oh my god, I got to interview Tom Sizemore for his last interview. I know it's not a crazy story or nothing over the top, but in terms of that, that was an interesting one. One of the interviews I got, I'm not going to give details, but I interviewed somebody out of New Orleans, and I actually had the alleged underboss's lawyer reach out to me and kindly tell me that I got to take it down. Like not in a lawyerly way, just it's got to come down. So I've gotten those, and then I got an actual warning. I started poking around Canada.
Why did you take it down
Um,
quickly? Why did you take the interview down?
I'm a free speech guy, and you're not going to inhibit my free speech. I'm also not an idiot. I know who's who, right? So the 2 times I took stuff down on those requests was one when it was a guy out of New Orleans who the father was a very serious guy, the son's a serious guy, and when the lawyer reached out, they weren't happy, and it wasn't very lawyery. I'm able to pick up on if it's a lawyer, they want to speak to your lawyer. They're not going to, they know the law. They're not going to say, hey, like you do this. They'll say, are you representing yourself? Just, he wanted it down.
Right.
I'll leave it at that. And it was professional, but he wanted it down. And then the second one, I did some stuff out of Canada, and I think I flew a little close to the sun. And this came from a good friend of mine at a Buffalo. So it's somebody I know and trust who knew somebody, and he goes, "Hey, listen, do me a favor. You need to take X down," and he did the best to explain why, and I took it down. The Canada people, the Italians in Canada don't play, so I might have maybe flew a little close to the sun, and I took that one down too. But outside of that, I got the usual threats. I got the online threats. I got stuff sent to my house, the stuff in the mailbox, the picture of me mowing my lawn. I've got all that kind of stuff. So I have like all different security protocols in place as a result. But it's not the mobsters you got to worry about. It's these wannabes and these idiots who think they're tough guys.
What do you mean, idiots who think they're tough guys that comment on your videos, or?
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of threats from people threatening to my house, threatening to abduct my children, threatened to and all like public saying it publicly. Which, first of all, like if you record a conversation with me and you're in a dual consent state, that's one felony, and then when you post it, it's a second. So I got a lot of resources behind me. I was gonna really kind of make examples out of some people, at least legally and appropriately. I'm like, you know what? Like my lawyer's just like I remember one day, and I'll give you an example, and hopefully you never have to deal with this, right? So my lawyer's on retainer. He's a family friend. He's been around forever. He's from Staten Island, good guy. Um, I go to see him one day, and on the agenda was the contract of a acquisition I was making, and we're going through that. And then the next thing was some mob tube stuff, like, "Hey, I'm getting threatened. What's our game plan?" And he's just like, "You see what you're doing here?" You're like about to acquire a business, and then you're having like some like junkie threaten you. He's like, "Just let it blow over. Listen, we got the resources. I got privacy people. I got resources. It's not an issue. We do our background checks if we have to, just to make sure if it's a real threat, we're going to match that energy." But it wasn't a real threat. I let it go and I moved on. But my point being is, it was just very incongruent to my life. You know what I mean? Like, on one end, I'm acquiring a company, and the other end, I'm worried about like some weirdo threatening me online. So that's why I kind of backed off on some of the content too in the space, because the space kind of wasn't for me.
No, I get that. We'll move on to your new bits and pieces in a minute, if that's okay. You mentioned
No
Canada.
worries.
Funnily enough, I was in Canada February last year, February 2023.
Last week,
You were in Canada last week?
I was in Vancouver, yeah, for
Oh,
work.
cool. Well, my family, I have family in Ontario, and I went over there, and on the news was this, I think it was in Hamilton, and it was
There,
these two brothers, right? There
yeah,
was something to do. I can't remember the ins and outs of it. It was something to do with a killing, a murder, or whatever. I'm like, the mafia. Like, I didn't realize I wasn't in this genre at the time. I was just watching it, and the mafia was like in Canada. And listen, you did an interesting. You've spoken about Canada before. You
yeah,
spoke about a guy called George in the banana riff with the risottos.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize that Canada was, one, really had a mob presence, and two, they're a
Yep.
damn sight stronger than the American mob.
I'll give you a good soundbite and also give you the background. The Canadian Mafia is by far the Canadian Italian Canadian Mafia is by far usurped and passed the Italian Mafia in strength, power, and money. Now, why is that? And I have a few reasons personally why I believe that's the case. Number one, when you're an Italian American in America, has a very dominant culture. You tend to assimilate quicker, and you tend not to be as tuned into the motherland. Versus in Canada, you still speak the Italian language, you still visit Italy, you still adopt the Italian culture. It's almost like being in Italy in a way. If you go to Hamilton, Woodbridge, it's like being in Italy in a way, right? In a certain sense, culturally, right? Canada does not have as much dominant culture. So number one, more in tune with the Italian culture. Number two, they don't have RICO and harsh sentences. So they're willing to kill people. They're willing to kill informants. They're willing to kill people. So when you're thinking of informing or you're thinking of doing stuff sideways, they're willing to kill you versus in the US. So that's the second reason. The third reason, and probably the most important, is the rise of Ndrangheta, which is out of Calabria. They were a $50 billion a year organization. They set up shop in Canada, and they far usurp the five families, the Sicilian Mafia, and the Sicilian Mafia in in Canada. And the way they operate is they don't have the muscle like the Sicilian mafia does, but they have the power, they have the institutional presence, and they control the drugs. They're probably the largest customer for the cartels in Mexico, Colombia, Bolivia, Peru, and Ecuador, because they control 80% of the market in for cocaine in Europe, and they also control the market in for MDMA and cocaine in Australia, and they control a considerable amount of the cocaine in Canada, and they're just a powerhouse.
Thanks for explaining that. No, it's really interesting. I find the Canadian mob fascinating. Actually, I've interviewed someone, Germano Tomasetti, who was around an associate of the Canadian Mafia and the Italian Mafia in actual Italy.
Was the guy who was on
That's
Johnny
right.
Mitchell,
The
right?
Connect, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think he either knows a lot or knows nothing. Nothing in the middle. Like when like there's ways to answer questions and give information without giving them, and I don't know if he has that ability.
Well, so you're questioning whether he was really around that.
Mitchell, he basically said nothing of importance or relevance, and he did it under the guise of, "Well, I'm not a rat, and I can get in trouble, and I don't want to throw anybody in the bus." But he didn't give that vibe. I just think he was very low level and just
Oh yeah.
read some Wikipedias.
Oh, he's definitely. I think he was low level. I think he admit that himself. What he did tell
Yeah.
me in the interview was that he had. I think he's already completed a documentary, and in that documentary, they've got somebody, one of the top, what do you call them? Behavioral people that can tell whether you're lying. Being interviewing him. The documentary hasn't aired yet, so that'd be interesting to see that.
Did he pass?
I don't know. It's the documentary hasn't aired. So
Yeah, I'm not. I don't want to. I don't talk about anybody negatively online. Anybody, even my enemies. I don't. However, I just was a little underwhelmed by his Johnny Mitchell interview. I'll leave it at that.
yeah, no, that's fine. Free speech, right?
That's right. Well, like I said, Voltaire said, "I do not agree with what you're saying, but I will fight for your death for your right to say."
Spot on. Uh, you interview these guys. It's very much a kind of business sort of stance of
Yeah.
what they are. Business. Are these guys smart, or most of them smart, like business sense wise? Would you say?
Yeah. I would say no,
Nah.
and I'll tell you why.
Well, I wasn't expecting
One,
that.
yeah, one, they got caught, right? So, like, number two, whether we like it or not, um, they weren't. So I believe there's a spectrum. Okay, and again, I get some crap for this, but I'm going to say it. I believe there's a spectrum of informants. I think to the right, you got a guy like Bill Catola. Wasn't a made guy interviewed him? They killed his father. Okay, he has every right. In Sicily, he would have to go in hiding. In Calabria, Napoli, he'd have to go in hiding. He'd have to crew up and come back and pretty much up the town, right? And whoever did him wrong, right? In the U.S., it's different. Bill took the route of let me get these guys in jail and put my father away. I see nothing wrong with that, right? Versus there's some informants where, based in 10 years, 15 years, you signed up for that life, you're not even threat of being killed, and you wind up rolling. So right off the bat, for at least the made guys, there was a lack of kind of institutional politicking and IQ obviously, but you ever heard of EQ,
Yeah,
emotional
emotional
quotient,
intelligence. Yeah.
to like get by. And I personally found the guys that I interviewed have a very low EQ. They get offended very easily. They get heated very easily. Um, they act like they're like they read like one like the prince in jail and they think they're Machiavellian. So so the reason why I don't think they're as smart is because they got caught and they also weren't willing to navigate um, in their organization to a way where they were more prominence, where when they did get caught, maybe their family could have got taken care of when they were in jail, or maybe they didn't make the right friendships to help bail them out. So in my sense, my experience with the guys that got caught were not that smart. And business wise, I always kind of felt the older racketeers were smarter. The Frank Costellos, even like obviously Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, not a made guy. Those were the brainchilds of these organizations. There's a guy, John Salupi, with the Colombo, is worth $500 million. But for the most part, your rank and file mobsters not that smart. And the guys that I interviewed, I think were even less smart.
Would you include Michael Francis in that?
No, Francis is very, very intelligent because again, but if you look, it's about congruency. He was a captain in the organization. And I can say when I interviewed, let's say Sammy versus captains versus soldiers versus associates, you can tell why they were at that rank and they're out of that life. Like I almost was going to do an experiment where I was going to show like 20 interviews of different people I interviewed and you would have to guess their rank and kind of see what people would do. And my opinion is, I think people will pick up on it. But Francine is smart. He's building a platform. He's monetizing the platform. I just think my advice to him, if he ever asks me as a marketer, is maybe not dilute it. He seems to be doing a lot of different things. But I think pizza's on brand. I think wine is on brand. I think speaking is on brand. So if he stays on brand and builds his platform, he'll have a nice legacy behind him.
Did you learn anything business wise, or I guess otherwise?
Oh,
When,
absolutely. but not to do. Absolutely. So a case and example. So like when Bobby Larisi, when I interviewed him, he said that he was in the drug business, right? So well, your core business is not drugs, is a mafia, especially in Boston. You're getting like one or two keys here. Why be in the drug business? You're either going to be in the cartel and like do it big time, or um um like why do it, right? So number one, stick to your core business model. Don't fray from it, right? Number two, look for red flags. So for example, Bobby said this publicly. So I'm not saying anything that's not public, but he had a cartel connection that he was buying a few keys from, right? Moving enough weight to be dangerous, right? And he said, listen, the guy goes, just out of curiosity, we said 300 keys to the Italians in New York. And I don't know if they were Androgynous Mafia, if the Sicilian Mafia is involved, but just Italians, whether it's transshipped or in New York, whatever. But we send 300 keys to New York every month. They get a sick price. Why don't you just buy from your Italians? He didn't even know who they were. So it's not even like the Italian Mafia was this intricate organization that stuck together. The third part that stuck out for me is he had to open up a whole bunch of cafes, right, to launder money. I said, wait a second. I know you were with the Philly mob. You had relationships with the Patriarcha. You guys didn't have banking relationships where you can easily launder your money as kind of like the house bank for the Cosa Nostra, or at least like they do in Italy. He's like, not at all. So I'm like, so one, stick to your lane on what you do. Number two, if you're in an organization that's not conducive to what your growth is, get the F out. And then number three, get the right support system around you. So that's just one use case example. And it's not knocking Bobby in any way. I had a great rapport with Bobby. I'm not knocking him in any way. He was a capo. I could see why he was a capo. He says he's now a man of God. I have no reason to believe otherwise, and I've always had a good rapport with Bobby. But that's one of my learnings.
oh, that was fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us. I know you'll will have a take on this. I'm really interested to know your take on what you think would have happened with the mafia if Paul Castellano survived.
Well, Paul Castellano was going to jail,
A lot he would have
so
taken
he
over
was
anyway, wouldn't he?
he was going to go to jail, and I just personally don't think that Tommy Bilotti was going to take the reins. But I do believe that a guy like Frank DeChico, who passed, I think they would have probably made him. I don't think Jimmy Fiella didn't want it at the time. Patsy Conte was making too much money. He didn't want it. The Gambinos and Cherry Hill, they didn't want it. But what I do believe is the Gambino family would have migrated more towards a professional business kind of community and would have dominated like again different industries like they did, but with a velvet hammer. So they would have had on the legacy of, hey, we're the mafia. We will still kill you. We keep some tough guys around, but they would have morphed into more of a Freemasonry. So in my opinion, if he didn't die and they had better succession, I don't think John Gotti was a bad boss in any way, but he just wasn't the guy to bring them to that next level. because there's too much of a street guy. So, just in my opinion, I think that if Paul Castellano died and they had a better handoff, I think the Gambino family to this day would have been stronger.
If Castellano beat the case, what do you think would have happened?
Well, he was older at that point, and you have to remember something. He did have their hands in their pockets, and even the money. So if you notice, like when John Gotti killed him, you know, there was alleged Totorina was going to put a hit out on him. There was alleged that they were a little worried about the Cherry Gambinos because there's like distant cousins, some of the Brooklyn guys, Danny Merlino, etc. But if you notice, nobody really stepped up, and they were capable guys because Castellano had their hands in their pocket. So I do believe Castellano at that point, I think he was out in his early 70s. So I think at that point he was done either way. And I think again, but he was leading them in the right direction, which John Gotti, in my opinion, made the wrong strategic move.
Interesting. I know this is a redundant question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Any take on where Jimmy Hoffa's body is buried?
I mean, they're pretty good resources, and I know who's like hot on that trail is Scott Bernstein. I believe he was going to an Italian restaurant to meet up with some guys from Detroit, and I think one from New Jersey, and was like never seen again. He's somewhere in Detroit area, and that story is kind of over in my opinion.
Yeah, redundant, old news, really. But I thought,
The mob killed JFK, and I think the CIA facilitated it. I mean, not rocket science. I still don't know why it's not redacted, but it's not.
congratulations on receiving 50,000 subs with your YouTube channel, man.
Thank you, sir.
That,
Thank you.
that is really impressive. You say,
That was a yeah.
sorry, mate, say again.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
How are you feeling about that?
I'm excited because when you hit a milestone like that. So when again, to be clear, people watching, I'm still going to do mob content. I'm just going to park it on Mobsters Inc. I'm going to be smarter about it, and I'm going to make it. That's why I have the ink in there. I'm going to really make it about business, where you can look and unpack and say, you know what, I got something from this. Not just to hear an informant, or not just to hear a prosecutor, or not just to hear a content creator, but to hear them and have a goal to meet with them and understand them and really get some value out of it. So Mobsters Inc. is still going to have that. But New Theory is the new direction I went. And I went back to doing business people. And to be honest with you, Rob, my numbers tanked at first. At first, my numbers, I couldn't get like 500 views on a video because of like it wasn't a guy dragging his knuckles. But now my views are back up and my subs are climbing because people are finding my channel and they're like, oh wow, you interviewed Mark Laurie, right? You interviewed Jordan Belfort, you interviewed Gary Vaynerchuk, you interviewed Michael Francis. Oh, you interviewed some mobsters. Let me check that out. And I got lucky on some ones too. I interviewed a woman by the name of Benita Alexander, who was the inspiration for Bad Surgeon on Netflix. I interviewed 2 years ago. I still get 50 views a day on that. Like that literally is like a worldwide phenomenon with Dr. Paolo Michelini, who committed fraud and pretty much crashed her life. And I did it recently on how OJ killed the mob. The Jersey mob may have killed OJ's ex-wife, and that was about 6 months ago, and that popped up. So I have like a lot of evergreen content. Like I interviewed Al Sharpton. So whenever something happens to him, that pops up. So I have a lot of interviews. Like to be honest with you, Rob, I'm surprised my channel should be bigger. I just haven't been putting the post interview resources into. I've been like surviving off the content, but I should be marketing more. I should be doing more shorts. I should be doing more press, more of these. I'm trying to drop a few pounds. I dropped, like I said, so far I dropped 15. So I'm trying to shed a little more weight so I feel a little more comfortable about doing more press. But you're one of the first few shows I'm doing out of this new press run. So I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you.
But and a lot of work to get there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street, massive film in the States, massive film in the UK, probably a massive film worldwide. I think you interviewed him some years ago, but what was he like to interview?
Now, what's weird is when I first started the podcast, on the business side, podcasting wasn't as big. So you were able to get guests very easily. Him, I got through a publicist. A little funny story there. So I go to meet him at Club Macanudo. I'm a big cigar guy. So I was so excited to be having a cigar with Jordan Belfort. I mean, what other, us normal blokes, I mean, that's as good as it gets. So I meet with him, but he has like a crew with him. And one of the women that was there was pregnant. She couldn't go in. So we went to the low hotel next door, and we did the interview in the lobby. And I'm doing the audio. My girlfriend, now my wife at the time, is doing the video. And the GM kept going to my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, turn that off. You can't film in here. And she's OG. She's like, no, I'm filming this. So we filmed it. For some reason, she lost it. I don't know how. So she filmed it, but she lost it. But we got the audio. It turned out to be a great podcast. He happened to be speaking at one of those big conferences, so it was very on message. But at the end, I got the story about how him and his friend went downstairs to get the Quaaludes, risking electricity and dying, just to get his drugs before the Italian Navy SEALs saved him.
Have you seen the interview with his ex-wife?
No, if you could send that to me,
I
I'd love
will
to see
do.
it.
It's literally just come out. She's written a book, and it's a fascinating interview. And obviously, she's not, I'm going to say, particularly kind. She puts her side of the story of the events that happened with him. Grant Cardone, there's a lot of negativity about this guy, and you interviewed him.
I like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you
So
think
so I'm
he's a real deal?
doing. Yeah, I think so. And I'll give my opinion. So I was interviewing Jared Glant, is like number two guy, and halfway through the interview, Grant hijacked it. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a super Grant Cardone fan at the time. I was kind of fanboying a little bit. I don't fanboy for the mafia guys. I fanboy for like the guys that made it in life, and Grant Cardone is one of them. My opinion with Grant is he is doing syndication, and I guess his challenge is the Cardone Capital. Let's kind of cut to it, right? So he's raising money, right? My personal opinion is he's basically a real estate investment trust or a syndication. He's taking your money, but my challenge is he thinks people are kind of dumb, and he's taking a lot of fees. He takes fees on intake. He takes fees when you manage. He takes fees when you buy. He takes fees when you sell, and he's a great entrepreneur and a great real estate guy, and going to be a billionaire if he's not already. But his fee structure is just way too high, and he's got to understand the millennials, the Gen Z, they're fine print people. They're going to call you out. So I just wish he was a little more equitable on how he manages his business, and I think that would help him out in his PR as well.
Spot on.
But I'm a Grant Cardone fan.
So, future, well, like your channel and how you've built it in your content, and I guess you've learned a hell of a lot from you about business from your channel and from other aspects of your life. What advice would you give to a small channel like mine or a channel that's not even kind of existed yet? What advice would you give to somebody like that?
Two things: be consistent, which I haven't been as much. I'm getting better at it, but be consistent. Because I was consistent in the beginning. I was cranking out like 8 podcasts a month at the time, right? No audio. And number two, have meaningful conversations. Like, don't worry about the views. Don't worry about the subs. Like, I'm at 50,000, and you could look at both sides. On one end, I should have so much more for the caliber of people I've interviewed, and I'll acknowledge that. That's on me, especially as a marketer. But on the same end, I'm happy just to be here. I'm a nobody, right? So, like, consistency and meaningful conversations. If you have meaningful conversations, they're gonna find their way. And if you have enough of them, eventually you're gonna break out, Rob.
This is what I my sort of goals I've set, and they're not many. So before I came onto this channel, before I came onto this genre, I thought, right, I'm going to see how the interview with Jeff Nadeau goes, and if it like
Yeah.
goes terrible, I get a load of abuse and say, "Oh, you're rubbish," get back into your hole, whatever. I thought I'm just gonna cut and run. And then I thought, okay, I'm gonna interview 10 people that not necessarily in the mafia, but have some sort of dealings with the mafia or some interesting analysis on the mafia, commentator like yourself, like Jeff. And then I've only done, I think I've done this. This will be my sixth interview. I've only got 3 up at the moment, but this will be my sixth. I've done another 3 this week. So when I get to 10, I was gonna like kind of maybe look to diversify slightly, but still in the true crime
Yeah,
genre. So
yeah,
maybe stuff like, I don't know, maybe biker gangs or ex Hells
yeah.
Angels and things like that. I was going to look at doing it. I wasn't 100% going to do it. What's your take on doing something like that?
Okay. So one thing I learned from my economics professor, but also from my drunk uncle in Italy, when the girls come to the party, it's time to leave. Okay, and here's what I mean: you're having a party, you get drinks and maybe some other stuff. You get catered. You invite your attractive people, maybe not just physically, financially. You have a friendship with somebody. You're a single guy. You're going to want the most attractive girls there, right? Now, all of a sudden, the drinks flow. Everybody's drunk. It's a shit show, right? It's winding down. Well, that's when the ugly girls show up, right? Because they're late to the party. That's kind of what happened in the mob genre, in my opinion. I think the ugly girls are now coming to the party. So, in my opinion, is remember the mob genre is a subgenre, right? The crime genre is a main genre. So why limit your potential on just doing mob stuff? You could be like the UK crime guy. Like I don't know if you like him, but like a junior Sean Atwood. I don't know where you land on him. Some people
I've
like him, some
seen
people
him.
don't.
Yeah, I've met the guy actually. Yeah.
You could be a junior Sean Atwood where you can cover crime. And you may be like, well, I'm not a niche and I'm not going to build up a rabid audience. Well, you will, one, if you get good guests. I could tell you have good guest acquisition already. I kind of maybe left that out. Guest acquisition is an art, not a science, and you're great at it. So I could just tell that you're a good network and you're going to get great guests. So I would focus on crime first, and then maybe mob, biker, international transnational crime, La MA, whatever that is, you know. And like I give an example, Jeff Nadeau. Jeff Nadeau has a fantastic channel. He's a great creator. I think he'll even tell you if he has a cartel guy on or does something that's Aryan Brotherhood or something that's crime, it drops significantly. Why? Because he did what it's called, did the same thing, audience capture. Audience capture is when you have your audience that expects this. So when you don't do this, they shun you. So you're now capturing your audience. Audience capture is okay for you, but you want to make sure it's as wide as it could be with not being too diluted. But I would focus on crime first, and then hit the subgenres.
But with your channel, your channel hasn't even your channel's been a subgenre of crime, and then it's just jumped into entrepreneurship, business. So
Yeah,
that's like jumping like total genres, isn't it?
strategy there, then people understand. I have a marketing firm, and we specialize in marketing products to men. So I wanted to build up a male audience. So I never really kind of super shared this, but part of the reason I also went into the mob genre, it was like 97% men. So I'm still building that up. It's not at a point where I get like super big sponsors yet. I do make a few bucks on sponsorships. I'm actually using it as a sales funnel now. So people that I come in are people that I do business with or pitch to do business with and use that as a funnel mechanism. If you have another type of business, so like for me, I make my money off of after work. So I don't make my money in having Rob on. I make my money off of doing creatives for Rob, becoming on a retainer for Rob, doing a website for Rob. So, I do pretty well on the podcast now when I got out of the mob genre because I'm using it again congruent to what the rest of my business is. So when I meet with you, we go for a pizza, we go for a cigar. Hey, your website kind of sucks. Oh, Tom, you do websites. Let's talk. So these websites, I can meet somebody and then over cigars close like a $15,000 deal. So I'm kind of going more towards that for my podcast, but I'm also I'm also getting the right guests that like I would normally want to talk to, and again try to have meaningful conversations.
What's your view on? I know you've done both, but remote versus face to face.
I now have a studio. I now have a studio that I'm renting. I'm eventually going to buy a building and have my own studio. Sorry, my phone is acting funny. Um, so right now I am like 90% in studio. I only do remote unless I have to.
Why is that?
It's a better conversation. It's much more meaningful.
Do you get more views?
You do, because they see you're in studio, and for some reason, there's a psychology behind it. And my podcast that's in studio versus those that are not are probably about 5x bigger,
Really?
unless it's a name. Like let's call it like I haven't done a tier one in a while, but let's call it tier two, tier three. If I do a tier two or tier three interview and it's in person, it does substantially better. My goal is because where I am in New Jersey is to get bigger guests that go on rotation. They come to New York, they go to Good Morning America, they go here, here, and there, and then um, shoot by me, maybe send a car for them, or maybe they're doing a movie, the movie sends a car for them, so it's not too expensive for me. But my goal is to get in on kind of a circuit of bigger interviews, which I'm working on.
What's your view on shorts?
I'm a huge shorts guy. I probably got like 20,000 of my subs from shorts, putting shorts up.
Well, because I haven't done any. So I haven't done any shorts. Probably should do them.
Give you some pearls. Take this interview, go into livelink.ai, put into the AI tool, and it'll break up 10 shorts for you. Um, upload them on Instagram, Reels, and TikTok if you have it.
Wow. I've got a TikTok account, but I haven't I haven't put any content on it. And the reason is, yeah, go on.
Yeah. Go ahead, go
I
ahead.
was going to say the reason is I'm still not really sure what I'm going to do with the channel. I wanted to do these
Okay,
10
so
interviews and then sort of get
you
monetized
you
and see
listen
where
to
we're at.
Gary Vaynerchuk?
No.
Gary V. Check him out. Check out Gary V. He's right up your alley. So he says, well, number one, perfection leads to paralysis, right? Just create the content that you're creating and then put it up there and let the market decide. And if you're like, love all this type of content, see where the market goes on what interview your people like or the interview that you want to do that you're passionate about. But to not post on TikTok just because you're not sure what the channel is about, but you have the content, you're shortchanging
No, I
yourself.
know what the channel's about. I mean, I wasn't sure whether I was going to keep on going, because I wanted to see whether it was viable, whether people are interested in it. And, I think.
Well, how do you post, Rob? No?
Sorry, what was that?
How do you know if you don't post?
I mean on YouTube to see
Oh,
to see if it goes.
okay. Is your experiment over or no?
Well, it wasn't, but it's gone like far exceeded my expectations.
Okay, so you're gonna stick around, right?
Yeah, I'm going to stick around. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Nice.
I'm pretty sure because people seem to enjoy it. I certainly enjoy interviewing people like you and others. It's gone a bit.
Well,
It's gone a bit of a weird journey. I wasn't expecting after like small amount of content. I've only been on the channel about six on YouTube about six weeks, 2 months, and it seems to have. I expected it to go.
how many?
So I think we're watching this. I think it's 762,
Nice.
and I've uploaded 10 videos.
That's very good. Congratulations.
Thank you. You think that's all right?
So very good. Yeah, very good. A lot of people don't even make it to 1,000.
Well, yeah, touch wood. I've got 3 interviews, yours and 2 others dropping, so hopefully that'll bring up some more subs.
Put it, and I'll do whatever I can on my end.
No, I really appreciate that. Thanks, Tom.
Pleasure.
Sponsorship. You mentioned sponsorship. What's your view on sponsorship?
Yeah, so everybody has different models, and again, being kind of a free speech guy, I'm also a free market guy. So everybody's always willing to do whatever's right for them, and I don't besmirch them for that. I personally believe I try to make it free for my viewer. So sponsorships are not as hard to get as you would think. Um, Even if it's a small one on a read for $100, maybe a mid roll for $50, and end of the $50, you get 3 or 4 of those, you're making a few bucks. So, advertisers want and need to get to the right audience, and podcasting is a great way to do it. So don't be shy with, especially products that you consume, right? So if you consume it, more than likely your listener consumes it. So reach out to those brands. Maybe you might get in-kind sponsorship, which is free product. Or you might get an affiliate code where every time they buy something, you make a few bucks. So if you're not going to get maybe paid sponsorship right away. So there's all the different levels of sponsorship. I just personally, for me and my channel, is I like sponsorship as a way to go. And I do get after work from it. So that kind of pays the bills. I'm still not, and I'm still not happy with my actual monetization of the channel, meaning how much time I put in, how much I got out of it. Because I am lucky where when I do business with somebody, because of the show, I make some money, but I would like the show to be a little bit more commercially successful. But I have to commit the time and I got to commit the energy, and that's kind of what I'm struggling with now,
Studio should
to be
help you with
honest.
that, though, right?
Well, correct. So my studio is in my office. So we rent a shared space. So I have my office. Our headquarters is now there, and I have the podcast room right there. And it's only 20 minutes from my house. So I like to interview on Wednesdays. So yesterday I did an interview with Kevin Interdonato. I should actually probably get you to connect with him. He was just on Matt Cox podcast, a few other ones. He released a movie called The Bastard Sons, kind of a modern day gangster movie. So that was kind of within the genre, called The Bastard Sons. Check it out. And I interviewed him yesterday for a second time for Mobsters Inc. And so I'm relaunching that. So it makes it a lot easier being in studio and being at the office.
No, I bet. I watched your interview with Matt Cox, actually. I thought that was
Oh, did you like?
I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was great. Anyone wants some, like, any business stuff? I don't really understand it. I'll be honest. So for
Yeah.
me, it's an education. And listening to you guys talk was fascinating because you came up with like these business ideas. It was funny because you mentioned something about building like a hotel prison.
I still think it's a bright. Like, listen, if there's any venture capital guys, listen, I got a few bucks, but I don't have. My idea was to build a hotel that you stay for a week, and it mimics like there's different levels. There's low, there's medium, there's high, and it mimics jail for a week. And the thing is, there's a safe word which they go lighter on you, and then there's like a super safe word, but it's very difficult to like get to. So basically, like you sign a waiver, and I don't think you can do this in America, so we may have to do it like in Thailand or something. But like where basically like I would get consultants to run, maybe get ex criminals themselves, and just you spend a week in jail.
That's a fascinating idea. There is something that's kind of, it's not really similar, but it's along sort of what you're saying, but very light. There's a cocktail bar near where I live called Alcatraz, I think something like that. And you go in there, you put on the prison suits, you sit in a cell,
That's
and you have like table service and cocktails and all that stuff. And there's games you play. I haven't been there, but it looks really good.
that's all. When I where are you in London?
No, not in London. I live just south of Bristol.
Okay, okay. Well, when I come to the UK, we'll meet for a pint.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, good stuff. Brilliant. What would you do differently?
In life or business or in podcasting, in what context? Because it's a loaded question.
Yeah, I guess it'll be too like long-winded, wouldn't it? Or too deep to ask even all of them. But so, what would you do in, let's say, business and podcasting? What would you do differently?
Okay. Well, there's to me, I separate them in a sense where in business, I wish I. This is going to sound terrible. I wish I let the wrong people go quicker. I'm like a nice guy. I think you could turn it around. But one of my mentors says improve or remove and give somebody a chance to improve that works for you or with you or be in your life, maybe socially. And if they don't improve, remove them. So I really wish I got rid of the wrong people quicker. So that's like, I know it's painstaking for me to say, but it's the truth. That's one lesson. In terms of podcasting, I just wish I got more serious about it. Like it's been like last year I probably lost money on the podcast. Well, little by design though. Let me share that. So I made X amount of money directly on the podcast, and then my marketing firm had like a great year. So when you have like a P&L that's all together, like I might have made money in marketing and I might have made money on digest, but like when it came to new theory, we made money, but I on purpose like made us like lose a little money for tax purposes. Let me leave it at that. But it's totally appropriate. Tax evasion is wrong, but tax avoidance is okay. So some tax avoidance strategies. But what I would have liked to do is have it be more profitable early. Like what I'm getting at is I'm focusing on monetization now, and I probably should have focused on monetizing it earlier. Like it was like a passion of mine, a hobby of mine, and I didn't care about the P&L. And I probably lost money over the years doing it, and now I'm making good money doing it. I just wish I got more serious about monetization early. Like I had this thing where like, oh, it's your passion, don't worry about monetization, or it's early, don't worry about sponsorships. No, fuck that. It should make money from dollar one. I do wish I would have monetized earlier.
Interesting. So, what does the future hold for you, do you think?
My hope is I'm going to do a sit down in person with Rob May
No,
when I
that's good.
cross the
I was going
pond.
to say it's going to
And
cost
then
you a few quid to fly me over.
and then
Oh, that'd be
I
good.
want for and for new theory, I'll come my own dime because I like it. For new theory, I want to get guests that when you see I got them, which I've done a few already, that you're like, how did you get that person? And then when you listen to that person, you say, wow, I never saw that person do this type of interview. That's my goal for new theory. And for Mobsters Inc., I want to really, truly extrapolate the business end of organized crime because it is a business, and I want to make sure I capture that correctly.
Where do you think it'll be in 5 years? Do you think it'll be fully fledged in, I don't know, sitting in a mansion somewhere if you're not already?
In 5 years, I'm hoping that I have a bigger media presence for myself, but then I also have people that are under me that are talent that maybe take over. The same people like, well, why did you change Armchair MBA? Why is it on Tom La Vecchia podcast? Why? Because I can hand over new theory to that new young buck that can take over, it could be talent, and that asset could live on. So I'm just hoping by in 5 years, following the rule of 72, let's say, um, I'm hoping to double my net worth by then and then be in a more comfortable spot by then. And I'm hoping that I put the right systems and processes in place to get that done. And on the media front, I hope I have a bigger media presence for myself and then people under me that are talent that are doing media for me. That's my goal.
Great stuff. So condensed, like because obviously we've dotted it about, we've talked about it, but where can people find you?
Absolutely. I guess the easiest way is, and I'm like, again, a very transparent guy. I go by my name, Tom La Vecchia. I don't have a moniker. I don't have an alias. So it's Tom at New Theory. That's my email. Email me anytime. On Instagram, it's at the New Theory Podcast. And reach out anytime.
So, listen, Tom, it's been a real fascinating chat. I've learned so much from you on the business aspect of it. Well, I hope everybody's learned something from you anyway. But certainly for people in my position or more, less, whatever, channel wise, then I hope it's been an education for them. Really great advice there. Really appreciate it.
Learned a lot as well. And it was a pleasure being here.
Oh, thank you very much. Right, all the best and good luck with everything. And we'll definitely catch up again soon.
Awesome. Be well. Thank
You
you.
too. Cheers, Tom.